1 year ago, I started a journey with the goal of sewing one block a week for 52 weeks. 52 blocks in 52 weeks. Can I do it? We're gonna die trying. Well, about 52 weeks because sometimes life just got in the way. Since this last block was a bit more complicating than the other 51 blocks, I split this one into two parts. In part 1, we cut and marked all of our pieces and started sewing the diamond shapes together. Now in part 2, let's sew our inset pieces and put together our final block. Let's get started. So let's start sewing what I'm going to call our inset pieces here. So I'm going to remove half of this. Just put these to the side and let's just focus in on this half for a second. Now the square goes here, triangle goes there, and then the other square goes here. Now let me rotate that so like this. I'll take this square and this triangle, put that to the side for a second. Now, I know the square goes in here. Let me flip this back right sides together for a minute, just so you can kind of see what I'm going to do. So I'll flip the pink triangle, or flipped over the pink diamond, and I'm going to fold it down as much as I can, and take note that right here you can kind of see where the stitching started for this seam here. Okay. Now I'm going to take the point that I marked here. Again, this is my 1/4 inch boundary mark. I'm going to place that right on that corner. Okay. And to make things match, I'm going to take a pin, put it right on the X center there. Then I'm going to I'm going to poke the pin right there on where the stitching started. And that should also be the center of the X that I marked on this side. Okay, so that's just to help me line up this square correctly. Again, this is just a technique that I found useful. Then I can flip it over, and for this I am going to put a pin just to hold it in place. And much like how we sewed the diamonds, where I started from this corner, put my needle down right on the X and took a few stitches forward, back stitched it to lock the stitch, and then sewed it all the way down. I'm going to do the same thing, but with this square. Okay, take it to our sewing machine here. Again, I'm going to lift it up, put my needle down right there on the X. Yep, it's right there. Okay. Then we're going to start stitching. We're going to take a few stitches forward, back stitch to lock it, and then I'll remove the pin and go all the way down. Okay, and let's see how we did. Okay, now I can start to finger press. I'm going to finger press the seam. This particular seam allowance is going to get pressed toward the square. I have to now start and sew on this side. So since the square is already kind of secured and stitched onto this half of it, I don't need a pin. Well, I can still pin it just to kind of make sure that the fabrics don't shift. But now it should be a lot easier to line up the edge there. And again, pulling away, making sure that there's no excess under there. And I'm just going to start, or I'm going to pull away all the excess there, line up my fabrics. You know what, I think I am going to put a pin here just to make sure that it doesn't shift on me. And again, put my needle down right here on my X mark. Take a few stitches forward, back stitch to lock it, then sew all the way down. Just putting the needle down right on the X mark. Did I get it? Yep, got it. Okay. Take a few stitches forward, back stitch. Remove my pin. And looks like the fabric shifted a little bit. There we go. So looks like the seam allowance on this, it wants to go outward. So I'm just going to finger press the seam allowance from the square in toward the diamond. And notice how this seam allowance now wants to go this way. So I'm going to just finger press that way. Okay. And then I can finger press this one over as well as kind of finger press this one, but we're going to sew the other square here. And it's somewhat flat. There's a lot of bulk under here, but at least there's no puckering, so that's a good thing. Let's do the other square, which goes here. Then eventually this triangle is going to go here. Now, not to make everybody confused, but this is only half of the star. The other half is, we still got to do that. Okay. But let's get this square. Same thing. We'll take our pink fabric here, fold it down. We're going to expose, sew again. Let's see, that stitch started right there. So I'm going to take a pin, and it might be easier. Yeah, it'll definitely be easier if I do it this way. So I'm going to stick the pin right where the two, or right on that X spot, which is coming out exactly where I started my stitch. Then I'll put this square, put the pin right where that X is, or right in the center of the X there. There it is. Okay. So that was just to help me align it, making sure that my 1/4 inch is going to be okay, or I'm stopping in the right spot, or actually I should say starting in the right spot. Take a pin, or take another pin, pin the two fabrics together just to make sure they're not going to shift on me. Put the needle down right there. Okay, we'll start sewing a few. Okay, so we got half of that seam sewn. Now we do the other side, and this will be a little bit easier because again, we got half of the seam sewn on, so we don't necessarily need to worry so much about the fabrics moving all around. But I'm still going to use a pin just to make sure that the fabrics don't shift on me midway through. Again, we'll start here. We'll go down and we'll sew on this edge here. So on my little scrap there, just to catch the thread. Marvelous. So again, we'll turn it over, finger pressing the seams towards the diamond. And again, I'm going to finger press all of these seams towards one direction. Now, same idea, but just we're doing it with the triangle. I can fold this in half, and I'm going to flip this half or this front half down. Now you can kind of see here we have a triangle shape. The spot where I marked the X, that's going to go right there. Okay, but how I line it up, well, I'm still going to take my pin on the back side of here. Yep. There's my X spot. I'm going to place the pin through there. Or actually, I can go a little further down. Okay. Then take my fabric here, put it right sides together, but I'm going to place the pin so that it comes out right on the center of that X. So, just off a hair there. Okay, so we'll make it so that this lines up, and we'll line up our edges there. I'll flip it over. Okay, just be careful because this right here, this is a bias edge, so I'm trying not to stretch it so much. And I'm going to put my pin here. Well, no, maybe not there, but there. Just to hold the fabrics together. Okay, and then I feel like I'm repeating myself there, but again, putting my needle down right there, sewing forward a few, then back stitch, then sew all the way down. So forward a few, back stitch, go all the way down. That should be my Y-seam chair. So forward a few, back stitch, go all the way down. Remember that. Place the needle down right on that spot. There. Let's see how we did there. And I'm just going to finger press a little bit. Now to do the other side. Again, fold it in half. Fold this part down. And it's all lined up nicely. But I'm still going to put a pin right here just to secure it down a little bit. What's the chair? So forward a few, back stitch, go all the way down. Okay, moment of truth. Ooh, looking good. Looking good. Yeah, that looks pretty darn good. I'm happy with that. Okay, so the seam allowances for the diamonds are all going to get pressed in one direction. Doesn't matter if you press it towards the left or toward the right, just press it in one direction. Okay, then these seam allowances, they kind of seem like they want to fall in towards the diamond. And then here, it kind of seems like they want to go toward the triangle. So that's how I'm going to press them. I'm not going to fight it. Nope, nope, nope. That's a battle I know I'm going to lose, so I'm not going to do that. So let me take this to the iron. Let's get these seam allowances all flat. Then we still got the second half to do. But the second half is exactly the same as the first half. So we're going to get these pieces all sewn together. Then when we're ready to sew the two sides together, we'll come back. I know that many of you have been sewing right alongside with me on this journey, so I ask you these questions. What has been your favorite block to sew? what has been your least favorite block? And which block was the most surprising in that it looked hard, but wasn't actually as hard as you thought? I'll tell you mine. My favorite block was block number 3, the log cabin. Well, log cabin blocks are generally one of my favorite blocks anyway. It was one of the very first quilt blocks I ever did. It's beginner friendly and doesn't have any complicating intersections like this final block. Speaking of which, my least favorite has to be this Lemoyne Star. I've never been a fan of Y-seams, and after making this block, well, I'm still not a fan. But I guess the silver lining to all of this is now I know I can do a Y-seam. May not be the prettiest thing, but at least I know what I'm doing. The block that surprised me the most was block number 4, when we sewed curves and made a clamshell. I was always afraid of sewing curves, but with the help of the quick curve ruler by So Kind of Wonderful, I got through it and started a whole project involving curved seams. Now it's your turn. Put a comment down below and let all of us know, what is your favorite block? What was your least favorite? And what is the one block that surprised you? I'll be curious to know what you struggled with and what you enjoyed. This will help in planning future sew-alongs. So I got most of these inset pieces sewn on, and we're at the point where we can now sew these two halves together. Now, one thing I should mention, on this particular block, because I do have alternating fabrics, if that center point is off in some way, for me, it's noticeable. So I want to make sure that that center point is as close as I possibly can get it to be. So I am going to use pins just to match up or to help me line up that center point here. The other thing I do want to mention is that I try to press the seam allowances, well, when it comes to these diamonds, I try to press the seam allowances all in one direction, but here I couldn't, or I'm having a little bit of a problem trying to press this one particular seam allowance in that direction because I got a middle seam right here, and this part is keeping it from actually going over that way. You might find that, or you might find that happening to you. When it does, just grab Jack and just pluck those few stitches. I'm just going to pluck those few stitches. I'm not going to go past this stitch line here. So I'm going to pluck up all of these stitches up to this point. And this will just help the seam. I think that's enough. This will just help me so that I can press the seam allowance that way. If you can't press one of the particular seam allowances in the same direction as the others because you got a seam or part of the seam of another block or another piece is holding it in one direction, just pluck the seam allowance a little bit, or just rip that seam up until or where it crosses another seam, and you should be okay. We're going to put these two halves together, and I'm going to use some pins. Then I can match it up to this side. I'm going to guess it's about there. Then I'm going to insert a pin here just to hold it in place. Insert one pin here to hold it in place. And I can take this one out and place it right there. Now, just like before, we do have, well, you can't see it up here because that's a little dark, but there is an X, or there is the 1/4 inch marking, or the X as I've been referring to it. There is one here, But unlike the other situations, there's also another one that's here. So you got two options. You could either start stitching from the middle, stitch out towards this X and stop and back stitch, or if you're like me, I'm gonna just start here, put my needle down right on that X, start a little, back stitch, then continue on, but we're not gonna sew all the way off. When the needle hits this point here, or when it gets close to this point here, we're gonna stop, adjust it so that the needle hits right on that X, back stitch a little bit, and then we'll take the whole unit off. Let's sew these two halves together. So we got these two halves sewn. Okay, and then again, how I did this was, just like on all the other pieces, I put the 1/4 inch X mark, or my 1/4 inch boundary, or the X as I've been calling it. Started there, sewed a little, back stitch, sewed all the way down. Then at this point, I made sure that my needle stopped right on that X mark here, back stitched, and then took the unit off the sewing machine. And let's open this up and see what we got. Okay, now that center point is gonna be very, very bulky. So what you can do is you can eventually press that center seam open, or you definitely don't want to press it to one side because that center spot, yeah, it's going to be massive. So you can either press it open, or you can kind of spin the seam in a way. Okay, so I'm going to eventually just get these pressed open. Okay, you just want to make sure that that center seam, because there's a lot of layers coming down right there, you don't necessarily just want to press it over to one side. Before we do that, let's first of all get these two inset triangles sewn on, and we're going to do it exactly the same way we've been doing all the other triangles. So here's what the block looks like thus far. I know it looks a little funky right now, but hopefully it'll look a lot better once we get these seam allowances pressed down. So let me take this to the iron. Let's get these seam allowances pressed down and we can trim up and square up our block. Okay, so here we got our block all nicely pressed, and like magic, once you get your seam allowances all pressed, the block looks a whole ton better. Okay. Now these inset pieces, these I purposely made them way oversized because, well, again, if you're like me and you don't have much experience with doing Y seams, having that extra wiggle room is a lifesaver. But the downside to that is you're going to have a lot of excess. For me, that's not really a big deal. We can just trim it down. So now that's what we're going to do. So I'm taking my ruler. I'm going to put it at each of these star points here, putting a 1/4 inch line there, making sure that, and matching one of the ruler lines against the seam. So we'll put it there. This 1/4 inch is kind of spot on, but down here it's way off. I'm not even going to worry about that, but I will trim it. Rotate it, do the same thing. Now I know this is a straight cut since that's the edge that I just cut, so I'm going to look here, 1/4 inch there, right on the point, 1/4 inch here. Okay. Trim all of that down. Now making sure I got a 1/4 inch here, 1/4 inch there. And then are we straight at the top? Yep, we're pretty straight there. So I can trim that. Last side. 1/4 inch there, 1/4 inch there, roughly. Here is our block, and this should be about 10 inches. Roughly about 10 inches. And here is my Lemoyne Star, also known as the 8-point star. Now my block ended up being 10 inches. If you're around in that ballpark area, you're good to go. For those of you who have anxiety about Y seams, just take it slow and just practice it, because in this case, practice does make perfect. Well, practice makes better, I should say. For someone who doesn't have much experience with Y seams or inset seams, I'm happy with this block. Well, that's it. That is block number 52. Can you believe it? A whole year's worth of work right there. Now what's next? Well, time to get all of these blocks arranged and somehow let's get this quilt top sewn together. Now, I'm going to be taking a few weeks off. Well, not exactly on vacation, but I'm going to get my quilt top together. Now, if you need help in terms of how to put it together, maybe you're just a beginner quilter and don't have any clue how all these different size blocks are going to fit together, well, not to worry. Give me a few weeks and I will put out a second video or an additional video and show you how I put my quilt top together, and it'll give you some ideas as to how to do it. For those of you experienced quilters, and if you probably already have an idea how you want to lay out this quilt top, so go for it. I should also mention one other thing, and you're going to be definitely interested in hearing this one. So I was planning to do a major giveaway, and I'm still planning to do that giveaway. But I'm also going to give you extra time, because in order to enter this giveaway, you got to get your quilt top done. You don't have to get the quilt quilted, you just got to get your quilt top all sewn together. What is the giveaway? Well, I will be putting a video out just going over what's in that giveaway, so stay tuned for that. Well, I hope you enjoyed this year-long journey with me. We're not exactly done yet, because we still got a few extra steps to do to complete our quilt top. Well, we got to get our quilt top sewn and we got to get this quilted. So we're not quite done yet, but at least we're done making all the blocks. That's a major accomplishment in and of itself. Just imagine, you got 52 blocks, and this is over a year's worth of work. Quite an accomplishment, if you ask me. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you have a little less fear about Y seams. And I hope this video did help you conquer those fears. Now, as always, go out and create something. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications on when I upload the next video. Put a comment down below saying what you liked or maybe even what you didn't like. And join the Facebook discussion group at Treasure Heart Creations. You can post pictures of the blocks that you created, or just scroll through and gather inspiration from other Treasure Heart Creation Group members. And from time to time, there are giveaways exclusively for Treasure Heart Creation Group members. So use the link in the description box below to sign up. If you're on Instagram, post pictures of the blocks that you're working on using the hashtag THC5252. Well, that's it for now. Now go out and create something.